Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Welcome. This is our 7th session in the Administrator Forum sessions that we've been holding this year. We appreciate your time, especially during this very busy time of the school year that you're joining us. I'm Cindy Berry. I'm the Program Director for Early Childhood Professional Learning, sometimes referred to as ECPL. And I just have a few housekeeping items. We ask that during the presentation that you keep your microphones muted, please. There will be an opportunity for you to have question and answer time with the presenters. But throughout the presentation, feel free to put your questions, comments, etc., into the chat, and they will be monitoring that. I'm pleased to introduce Jenny Metcalf, who is an early childhood principal consultant with the Illinois State Board of Education, who will introduce our speakers today.
Hi, everybody. Here we are again for our 7th session in May. Hard to believe the year seems like it went somewhat fast. Our topic today is addressing recruitment and enrollment challenges in our new normal. We all know this has been an area that has been really challenging in the last couple of years. We really hope that this session will help you think about some strategies that you can use to connect these underserved families and children as we go forward to help bring up our enrollment in our early childhood programs. Our presenters today are Grace Araya, the Director of Community Systems Statewide Supports, Markinta Thomas, the Director of Referrals and Outreach, and Janet Vargas, Community Systems Statewide Support Trainer and Coach. We're happy to have them here today, and thank you all.
Thanks, Jenny. Welcome, everyone, to this series. So we're going to be talking about addressing recruitment and enrollment challenges in the new normal, incorporating strategies to connect historically underserved families. Again, my name is Grace Araya. I'm joined here with my colleagues, Markinta and Janet. And so if you have questions as we're moving along, feel free to go ahead and put your questions into the chat. We will also have a Q&A time at the end as well. And so we'd like to get a sense of who is in the training today. So if you could share in the chat, if you could share your name, what is your affiliation and your role, and also where you are. Just want to get a sense of where people are in the state. Oh, hi, Kristen. Welcome. All right, we see Southern Illinois. Amy, welcome. Trees, Naperville. Family engagement staff. Excellent. Thank you. And welcome. All right. Oh, it's good to see familiar names and faces. All right, so let's go on to the next slide. We'll give you a sense of what are our objectives and what we hope to do with our time here today. And so we are hoping that through this training, you'll gain some insight and strategies to facilitate program recruitment, enrollment, and retainment. So that's what we'll be focusing on. Next slide, please. And so we'll start off talking about community outreach. So Markinta will be talking about that. And then we'll talk about recruitment, followed by enrollment and retainment. And then again, we'll have some time for Q&A. We will have time for breakout rooms for you all to also hear from each other and learn from each other, because we think that's a important part of all of this. So we will be sharing, what we know and our experiences, but certainly want the learning to happen among you all as well. Okay, now I'm gonna hand it over to Markinta. We'll talk about community outreach.
Thank you, Grace. So thank you everyone for having us here today. So I do want to talk a little bit about community outreach. So we all know that community outreach is an important component of enrolling families. Outreach is a really effective tool to connect with families, but also to connect with other organizations. When you're doing outreach, it puts a face to your program, and it also ensures that you're known in your community as a valuable resource. So what is outreach? I'm going to ask you guys to take a moment and just drop in the chat some of your definitions of outreach and what you think outreach is. collaboration, providing resources, establishing relationships, providing support, connecting to the community, meeting their needs. Okay, there are a lot of great answers coming through. Someone said that I have a little bit of an echo. Grace, are you hearing an echo from me?
Just a little bit, yes.
Okay. Is that better?
Let's see. I think you need to stay a little more seconds to see if I still hear echo.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's a little better. It's
Okay.
somewhat a little bit in the background, but yeah.
Give me 1 second. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, I apologize for that. So one important component of outreach is developing an outreach plan. And I asked you guys what is outreach because I knew that a few different answers will come through, and all of these answers are correct answers, but it's really important that as an organization, if you're doing outreach, you really need to outline how your organization defines outreach. So you really it is that you're trying to do with your outreach and what some of those outcomes are that you're looking for. And a part of that is going to be developing that outreach plan. So in that outreach plan, one of the things you want to do is define key targets for outreach. You really want to look at what are some of your funder requirements for outreach? So that should be a part of your key targets is what are your funders requirements? Do you have to connect with families that have children with special needs? Do you have to connect with those families that may be experiencing difficulties such as children in child welfare, children who may be experiencing homelessness? Are those funder requirements and are those represented in your program? You also want to look at community level and enrollment data. So as I mentioned before, when you look at your enrollment data, you want to know what's represented in your program, what families you are currently enrolling. Are you reaching those families that are easiest to reach, those families that are coming into your program, or are you really going out seeking those families that are furthest from resources, those families who don't typically enroll in your program? And when you look at community level data, there's a comparison that happens there, right? So who is in your community and who is in your program? How can you look at the two and make sure that your program really represents the population that you are serving, the community that is around you? And as you continue to develop your plan, it's important for you to really look at, can we go to the next point? It's important for you to really look at some of the key staff for outreach. So you want to make sure that you have identified those staff who are responsible for outreach, the staff who are responsible for managing this outreach plan that you're putting together. You also want to make sure that you have a sure message for your staff that's embedded throughout your entire program, that there's unified messaging about your program as a resource, about the resources that you're able to provide for families, and that message is echoed not only throughout the community, but also within your program, and that you're all speaking the same language within your program. You also want to make sure that you're clearly identifying available resources. So what resources are available to you that you can use in outreach? What funding do you have? What marketing materials do you have? What giveaways are you able to provide for families? What's available and how can you use that? Make sure that that's clearly defined in your outreach plan so there are no surprises. So if there are surprises, those surprises are bonuses, not necessarily things that you're looking for that you don't have, because you already have a clear plan for how this goes. In your plan, you should also outline those success indicators and implement some sort of learning and improvement process. So there are quite a few learning and improvement processes out there. You have continuous quality improvement, you have action learning, you have the plan, do, act, check, and review process, but you want to make sure you have that process built into this plan so that as you're implementing this plan, as you're implementing your strategies, you're reviewing those, you're seeing what's working, what's not working, who's coming into your program, what message is going out, and you have some sort of process of tweaking this plan and then making sure that this plan really fully exemplifies your organization, really fully engages your staff, and really is fully, you're meeting those key targets that you're looking for, and you're really fully pulling families into your organization. And then lastly, you want to identify and plan for engaging external partners. This is really important because it's important to know who's in your community, who's serving those target populations that you're looking for, and then how can you partner with them and engage those organizations to assist you in your outreach and recruitment process. So we're going to go a little bit deeper in the next slide about knowing your community, specifically thinking about identifying community partners. So I'm going to talk through on this slide some questions that you can ask yourself that point you in the direction of those key partners that can aid in connecting you with families who you don't typically enroll in your programs. So what are some programs and resources that are serving young children, specifically those that are assisting families experiencing difficult circumstances? So we know that there's shelters, there are FCRC offices where families are connecting with SNAP programs. You have your WIC offices. You have different programs in your agency where families are looking for resources. How can you partner with those programs? How can you make sure that those programs know that you're a resource for families as well? And when you're thinking about who is in your community, you want to look at those cultural and community organizations that are partnering with those diverse families as well. On my team a couple of years ago, we realized that there was a very large Rohingyan population near one of our offices. These were Rohingya immigrants who had come into the United States they were actually refugees. They were looking for help, but nobody had really engaged this organization beyond those who lived in the community. So when we found out about this community, we reached out to the Rohingya Cultural Center just to get a better understanding of this community, how we should approach this community, and if early learning resources, we know that they're valuable, but if this community would even be interested in that. And in connecting with that organization, we were able to respectfully connect with those families, assist them through the application process. And for those families who were not interested in applying for early learning programs, we were able to provide some on-site educational resources and educational experiences for those children, respecting those families and meeting them where they are. And eventually those families reached out to their caseworker to enroll in a program because they had experienced some of that. So thinking about that piece, thinking about being culturally responsive, but also following the lead of these organizations, because a lot of times they're partnering with families and they're trusted partners for those families. Next, what are the local businesses that are frequently patronized by families in your community? We know that families are going to the stores in your communities. They're going to the gas station in your communities. They're going to different organizations, different businesses in your communities as they're taking care of their families. So can you be there? Can you partner with them if they are reputable businesses in the community? Can you partner with them to refer families to you, for you to be a resource, and they understand that you are a resource, and that if they're seeing kids, if they're seeing families, that they can share your information or post a flyer within their business. And then what are the other early learning programs that exist in your community? This is important for partnerships, opportunities, and for referrals for both of you. So what other programs in your community? How are those programs serving families? What's the best way to connect with those programs and possibly partner with those programs? And then what programs have supports that are also needed by the families that you serve? So as you're doing outreach, and the purpose of the outreach that we're talking about is to outreach and recruit families to your program, but once you've enrolled those families, do you have supports to sustain that enrollment and ensure that those families have those wraparound services that they need? So as you're doing your outreach, it's important to connect with those programs. And as important as it is to know your community, it's just as important to be known in your community, to build those relationships and work on engaging community partners. So one of the most important components of doing that is to get out of the building. If you can, if you have the opportunity, or if you have staff that can, really get out, go out, meet these people, meet staff, visit organizations, really get to know your community, get to know who's in your community and who is serving families. Next, you want to have active and effective communication. As I mentioned before, it's important to have that concise, culturally responsive messaging on your program. Make sure that everyone knows that you're a valuable resource for children and families. You also want to provide updates to these organizations outside of asking for a favor or outreach opportunity. Dropping in and saying hi, sending them information on what's going on in your programs, inviting them into your program. This is really important because it builds that relationship, and it's not just asking for that favor. but that favor is important. So you want to have a clear ask and a clear referral strategy for these partners that you're meeting. You want them to clearly understand what it is that you need, what it is that you provide, in a clear way that they can refer families to you. And then lastly, you want to highlight those partnerships that you have. You want to highlight them publicly. You want to do that through social media, through newsletters, through different ways that where if they're supporting you, that it's known by the community that they're supporting you, they're supporting children, and they're supporting families. And then you also want to implement a feedback loop with them, with the parents in your programs and the families that you're working with, but also with those community partners, so that you know that the families, if you are doing a cross referral and you're referring families to these organizations, I'm sorry, slow down, I apologize for that. And so if you are working with these organizations and referring families to these organizations, you want to make sure that you have that these parents are having a great experience with these community partners, but you also want to hear from these community partners that your families are visiting them and that this is a true partnership with them. And then here we have some examples of local community partners that are important to know, but also, again, it's important for them to know you. So there are various organizations that are working with families in different capacities, and they also can connect you to outreach opportunities. So we have businesses in your areas. As I mentioned before, these businesses are utilized by families in your community, all different types of families, and it's important that they know about you, that you have information there, and that families see your information when they go in these spaces. Also, that it may be an opportunity for them to assist you with an outreach event that you may do a host for families, provide some donations or things of that nature. Also, when you look at family supports, these are places that families trust for resources. They trust the people who work here. They trust that they know their community. They trust that if they refer them somewhere, that place is a trusted place. So having relationships with staff in these organizations, making sure that these organizations have a clear person, a clear contact at your organization, that they know about your organization is very important, because they're referring families to different places. They're referring families. They're that trusted partner with families. Thinking about social organizations. So I have quite a few social organizations here that families frequent, but I also have those organizations that adults are frequenting as well. So when you think about your local chapters of professional organizations, your Greek letter organizations, religious organizations, these are places where the adults are going, where the adults are trusting people, but these are also places that are hosting events, hosting different opportunities for you to do outreach and partner with them to do outreach and recruit families. So thinking about these places, thinking about how families are engaging with these organizations, and making sure that you are connecting with those organizations as well. Lastly, your community leaders. This piece is really important for getting the message out about you and about what you're doing. So when we think about our community leaders, we don't necessarily think about them as active outreach partners, but they are. So the parents in your communities who are trusted partners, those generational residents in your community who may know about your program, but may not know everything about your program, or may not know changes that have been implemented in your program, Block club leaders, the alder person in your community. All of these people are trusted messengers in your community. So if they know about your organization, they know about the outreach that you're doing, they know about you, they know about referring to your organization and referring families with young children to your organization, they can do that and they can share that message with the community. Now we want to think about some opportunities for partnership. I shared a lot of local businesses and local organizations that you can think about partnering with, but how do you partner with those organizations? So as you're working to build those relationships, these types of partnerships can benefit you both, and that's what you want to think about. So cross referrals, you ask organizations to refer to you as an early learning program, but also refer families to those organizations. This is an opportunity, as I mentioned before, to think about some of those wraparound supports that families may need that are enrolled in your program, and even those families that you are trying to enroll need wraparound supports. They may need transportation assistance, they may need assistance with getting birth certificates, they may need medical, dental, those types of things. And this is an opportunity for you to do that cross referral. There's also cross training. So you can go partner with organizations to possibly attend staff meetings for case managers, staff meetings for different folks in the organization, and do some cross training. Educate them about early learning, the importance of getting families enrolled, the benefits of for the full family for enrolling in a program such as yours, and then how they can refer to you. But then they may also have areas of expertise that are beneficial to you, beneficial to the staff in your program as well, and be able to do those referrals also. There's also sharing resources. So thinking about when you're partnering with organizations, what resources can you share with one another? If you're partnering with another early learning program in your area, is there an opportunity to share, to do some joint recruitment strategies, which is listed here also? Is there an opportunity for you guys to share training? Is there an opportunity for you guys to partner together to mitigate some of the costs that come with doing outreach and really, truly recruiting families? Are there co-location opportunities in your community? So when I mentioned before going to your FCRC offices, your WIC offices, medical and dental offices, things of that nature that where families are seeking out services, is there an opportunity for you to be on site there referring for your program? Is there an opportunity for you to connect with families, even though you've trained that staff to be messengers for you? Is there an opportunity for someone from your program to be able to sit on site there and really engage families, talk families through the application process, talk families through what it means to enroll in your program, and really do that hand holding, that recruitment that Janet is going to talk a little bit more about it later in the presentation, but really thinking about where those opportunities lie as you're doing outreach and as you're planning for those organizations that you are that you are going to recruit with. Then thinking about enrollment assistance and streamlining documentation. One of the issues that a lot of families have is the amount of paperwork that they have to connect with resources. Your resource, other resources, the folks who are referring to you, is there a way that you can build a piece of your application process or mimic their application process in your application process so that families don't have to fill out so much documentation? Is there a way that you can that you guys can share information with the approval of the family, of course, but sharing information across programs so that the enrollment process in both programs are easier for families. And then thinking about waitlist referrals. All programs have waitlists. A lot of programs are encouraged to have waitlists. But when you think about waitlists, one of the things is that the families that are sitting on that waitlist are not being served. So if your program is full and you have a waitlist, or if your program just cannot serve that family because there's another family that you need to hold a space for or serve in a certain way, can you refer to someone else? And can you have an understanding with that or a partnership with that organization where they are referring to you as well? Or when you think about birth to 3 and 3 to 5, is there a way that there can be some cross referral in that respect also? So really thinking about the wait lists that exist and how you can manage those wait lists and make sure that families aren't sitting on wait lists and are actually being served in programs. So now we're going to do a brainstorm activity with partners. We're going to have a breakout group of about 3 folks each, and we have 2 questions, or one question and one thought process that we have here. So the first question is there a key component of the outreach plan that I shared that's important for your organization at this time? Did I share anything that maybe you're not doing or you've thought about doing and haven't implemented? And is there about that, is there a way that you can implement that? And then also thinking about, can you identify 1 to 2 organizations in your community that you either have thought about reaching out for partnership or that you will reach out for partnership with after listening to this presentation? You'll be in your breakout groups for 6 minutes. And then once you finish the breakout group, we'll come back and we'll have some folks share either in the chat or you guys can unmute yourself and share some of your discussion thoughts. Okay, everybody. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with one another. We do want to hear some of what was discussed in your breakout room. So if 1 or 2 people want to unmute themselves and discuss possibly both or one of the discussion pieces that we had here, or if you want to put thoughts in the chat, that works too. I can read them out.
I think in our group, one of the things that we talked about was balancing that challenge of recruitment so that you're attracting the families that you need to be attracting to the program, and balancing that with your availability of service to offer to them. So some families do go through that process and they come and they're screened, but then due to, you know, building constraints where you only have a small amount of classrooms that you have to offer, or, you know, in our case in Springfield, where we're down a few teachers, you know, again, we don't have the maximum amount of spaces that we've had in the past that we could offer to families. So it's difficult to really work hard to seek out those families and bring them to your program and then not have something that you can offer to them.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I see someone dropped in the chat about family support staff is very important, and having a unified plan and message. That is very important. Does anyone else want to come off mute and share?
Markins, I would just add to the comment that was just made about possibly not having, you know, you recruit, right? You've done a good job. That's why you're getting so many families, but then not being able to serve everyone. So how important that having those partnerships where you are able to refer to other programs in the community so families can be served as well. Yeah, thank you for sharing that tension and challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Thank you for that point. Okay, so if there's no one else that wants to share, thank you all for your time today. I'm going to turn it over to Janet Vargas, who will talk about recruitment. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. There's one more point that came through that I do want to share because this is important, where they talked about translating the family handbook into other languages and talked about connecting with organizations that serve multi-language speakers. So that's a very important point, ensuring that you are being culturally responsive to the community that is around you. So thank you, Janet, for that point. And as I said, thank you guys. I'm going to turn it over to Janet Vargas here to talk through recruitment.
Thank you, Markinta. All right, so Markinta talked broadly about community outreach, and in the next few slides, we're going to drill down a bit further into recruitment and outreach by reviewing a typically effective outreach and recruitment strategy, and also talking through a best practice for shaping your recruitment strategy. Let's see. So the strategy we want to spotlight today that communities and stakeholders have had a lot of success with recruitment is what we refer to as parent outreach ambassador. And so we don't have too much time and a lot of information, but I really like interaction with you all. So if you feel free to use your reactions, your chat, like just unmute and jump in if you feel the urge to, but would love to hear from you all. So who has heard about the parent outreach ambassador program or parent outreach ambassadors? You could do like a little reaction or even just your finger if you want to go. Okay, well, let's talk about it right now. So what is a parent outreach ambassador? It's when early childhood education and care stakeholders bring together, prepare, and support parents to go out and do peer-to-peer outreach, go out to the community, talk to and listen to other parents in the community. It usually happens in a group of parents plan, carry, and go out and do this outreach. And this includes having the parents plan when and where they will reach other parents, because again, we talk a lot about meeting parents where they are, and typically parents and leaders in the community will know where other parents are. They also can take some of the co-responsibility and telling the data and making sense of it. So then they're, you know, when they go out in the community to do outreach and recruitment, they may, they usually go to different events or door to door, just door knocking, and or going to spaces and events where families are typically, and they, in terms of, you know, Markinta talked about outreach goals and like objectives for your outcomes. Some of the things that outreach ambassadors may do are share the importance of early childhood information, right? A lot of times being able to hear firsthand experiences about how these programs have impacted and supported. Oh, there's stuff in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Janet, so some of the questions that have come up around this, is it, you know, are they like a parent educator? Is it like a parent advisory council? Is it a paid position? So
Okay.
those are just some of the questions that came up.
Yeah, let me go through a couple more slides and then I'll answer whatever is not answered. But thank you. I asked you all to put stuff in the chat and then I just go and read it for a while. So yeah, it's a group of parents that go out, they share, you know, either at the door or on the street or wherever they see other parents, you know, asking like, hey, do you have a child 0 to 5 or 0 to 8, whatever your demographic, targeted demographic is, kind of, you know, sharing the importance of early childhood programs, and particularly your program. Sometimes, you know, there is an opportunity to get feedback from parents, like, oh, you know, are you in a program? Like maybe 1 or 2 questions or a whole survey to not only share a message, but hear about experiences from other families. And what also has been incredibly successful or like effective is getting referrals then and there from families, right? So it's like, oh, you do have a child. Are they in a program? You know, like yes or no, like, and if not, would you want to learn more about a program, and getting, you know, their name, their contact information, and letting them know that somebody will get back to them, answering any questions that they might have. And just overall an opportunity to invite parents to engage in early childhood services. So, you know, the parent outreach ambassadors, they tap into their existing relationships. They might be part of a parent advisory council, so they can go and like share the message there. They share it with their family, and they literally meet parents where they are. You know, we know that a lot of the historically underserved communities, there's a sense of social isolation, right? Some people might work a 3rd shift and sleep through the day and just don't know what's out there, aren't getting much out of the house, or just going through, you know, different circumstances where they are socially isolated. So it might be helpful to see more of a friendly face. Maybe it's somebody you know at the door. Maybe it's, you know, somebody who doesn't seem like a professional, but just another parent, a neighbor that might bring the information to you at your home. Again, like public spaces, grocery stores, as they're going about their day-to-day in the community, like pick up and drop off at schools, at faith-based locations, and overall know where parents find other parents. All right, so I'm not gonna get too much into the nuts and bolts of how to do it today, but I do want to leave you with some resources where you could find out more. Like if you're interested, you know, like what is an outreach ambassador program? What resources are needed? What tools could be helpful? Like things from templates for a survey, templates for you know, messaging, you know, to train parents. And so overall, like going back, typically for a parent outreach ambassador program, it is a fair and just practice to offer stipends to parents. What it usually looks like is like a short-term commitment from parents that you outline, you know, as the program who is leading and supporting parents to go, you know, to go out into the community, often in like intervals of 4 hours, and with a buddy system to go out in the community, go door knocking, and just cover the different spaces or different areas of the community that you want to target. And it is not, it uses networking and peer-to-peer outreach in a very targeted way, right? Like they're literally ambassadors of early childhood programs and that bridge and the connection. And so there's also like a template tally sheet and this resource. So our team created a handbook, and part of the handbook, the third section, is implementing the 4 community systems and policy engagement roles. One of those roles is outreach ambassadors. It's so it outlines a very practical how-to. So Grace put the link in the chat to this document, and if you look at pages 4 to 6, again, it explains the role, the purpose and benefits for everyone involved, and strategies and tools as well. Let's see, not heard of. It's just like networking. Yeah, like very targeted networking for sure. Any questions around the outreach ambassador effort? All right, and I know like in the city of Chicago uses the outreach ambassador model. Every summer, for the whole summer, they hire about like 40 or 50 parents to go out and just find families and get referrals to early childhood programs, and it's been a pretty effective model, and the city pays for it and then partners with programs. So I know we're working in a landscape of scarce resources, but and just putting this out as a strategy and putting out some ideas, you know, such as Markinta talked about, like where can we tap into resources? How can partners help pool resources to make a program such as this a reality? And so that's, we wanted to share at least one specific strategy with you all. And you might be thinking, I know, so we were talking about like these times. Okay, I see the chat, let's see. So I see, Lisa, they are not parent educators. It's possible that parents could be on the Parent Advisory Council, but it's not one and the same. Thank you, Grace. And then for the child parent centers and CPS, we have a school community rep that helps to handle this as well. The parent resource teacher and the head teacher also work in this capacity. That's great. Let's see, do they sign up with Illinois Action for Children or district? Lisa, is that question for around?
As far as the stipend.
Oh, okay. So I think it depends. We've seen, well, I've seen like this, the program that Department of Family Services, they subcontract with a community-based organization, and then they do all the training and recruitment of parents. But I've also seen programs just, you know, find funding and have like a mini ambassador outreach effort on their own.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking is because like I said, those are my questions in regards to the parent educator.
Okay.
And so our parent educator kind of does those kind of things. And
Mhm.
so that's why I was asking, who pays for the extra? Is this
Okay.
something that we need to include in our grant as we get ready to write, or
Where are you located?
in South Village?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say you could include it in your own grants, in your own finances. You can try to find other organizations that may be interested in funding it, or pool resources between programs. Yeah, there isn't a
You just talk
streamline.
about the stipend. How do we get that stipend?
Yeah,
You'd
so I
have
think
to pay for it.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Grace.
Yeah, you'd have to include in your program budget, but I think one of the points that made earlier around sort of partnerships, you know, in a given community, perhaps several programs might want to pull their resources together, right, to be able to provide stipends for parent ambassadors in the community, so that, you know, all programs can recruit together and hopefully get their enrollment numbers up. So I think there's ways to be strategic about it and think about different ways, but this being different than, say, a parent educator, because a parent educator is a staff person, right? So the idea of the parent ambassadors, it's a parent talking to another parent, right? So we know that in terms of being like a trusted resource, sometimes it helps when it's another parent that's telling you, hey, I have the child in the program, or, you know, my child, you know, used early learning services when they were younger, and it was, you know, was effective, and this was my experience. And so it's another parent, right? So it's a peer rather than a staff person. But yes, we know typically staff are also responsible for recruitment, right, and helping with increasing enrollment as well.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, it tends to be maybe 8 hours a week over a short-term period. So it can, if you have funding, it's not the heaviest of lifts, although I know that money is hard to come by. Thanks. I do, let's see. Oh, and then there's G. Austin said you can include it as a component of your parent partnership agreement with your program. That's a good idea. And so I know I didn't get too much into the nuts and bolts of the Parent Outreach Ambassador program, but Grace put the PDF of our handbook in the chat, and that has more of a how-to steps that might be helpful if you're interested in learning more about this initiative. Let's see. And then, so I know, like, the big elephant in the room, like, we're still in the pandemic, although, you know, sometimes we try to forget. And so I think overall, there's ways to keep both, like, if you have a peer-to-peer outreach program, or even your staff and parents that you're interacting with are engaging, keeping them safe, right? There's touchless materials or touchless technology now. Like, I know a lot of people are using the QR codes where you have to just scan it with your phone, you know, when you go to a restaurant. We could also use that technology to share applications or even flyers. And then, of course, offering personal protective equipment and materials. And then in terms of recruitment, you know, making sure that whatever outreach you're doing in recruitment, being transparent and acknowledging that, you know, the very real fears that outreach staff and family have, by being transparent about the policies and procedures that you have in place around, you know, how are we going to keep our babies safe and our staff. So you do want to then, let's see, go in the chat. You're welcome, Lisa.
So
Now,
Janet,
yeah.
sorry, it seems like for some, the handbook that I shared, I think some folks were not able to download it. So we're more than happy to share this with Susie, and hopefully she can email it out to everyone that's registered for the training. So you all have that as well, if anyone is not able to download it.
Thank you, Grace. And sorry about that technology issues. They don't go away. They just mutate. And then I do want to, in my section, to spotlight a best practice, and I probably should have started here. But overall, what we've seen as we support stakeholders across the state, that really the best way to do recruitment and outreach is to tailor that recruitment to the local needs and experiences of families, right? Not all families are the same, not all communities are the same. And so it is so important to start with asking communities and families about their experiences, needs, and interests. And you can do that with surveys, focus groups, small in-person meetings, or even if you do decide to do peer-to-peer outreach, a couple of questions to just hear from families in the communities. You know, what are obstacles to accessing these programs, and how can we help them overcome some of these obstacles? And so some of the topics for learning more from parents, like I said, is targeting both families that are currently enrolled on what was their experience, what worked, what could improve, but also going out and targeting families that are not enrolled in any programs or not enrolled in your program, and asking them, right, like, are they interested, and why or why not? And then if they are interested but are having trouble accessing it, you know, what kind of obstacles? So those are were a couple of examples of questions. And so right now, Grace is sharing this really great report that we found. We can't take credit for it, but we found it and doing some research. It's almost 10 years old. In Illinois, there was a pilot that gave money, resources, and some data support to, I think, about 6 communities in the state of Illinois who were having trouble with recruitment. And the goal of the pilot was to hear from families about what obstacles to accessing and enrolling programs, and then help give resources to these communities so that they can address them, right? And so a few examples are, one community asked families about, like, what is the biggest obstacle for enrolling in our program? And they talked about, just enrolling in the program, going in and doing the paperwork. Like, sometimes people have to take a bus, they have other children, they don't have childcare, and really, that came up as an issue. And one of the solutions that they piloted were just, okay, like, what if we sent staff to the families to help them complete the paperwork in their homes? That way they don't, you can get over the transportation obstacle. The children are, at home. It's easier for families. Another community talked about, again, being overwhelmed by enrollment paperwork and just all the records and paperwork that they needed to get in order to enroll their child. So that community worked across sectors with the local medical and dental clinic, and had them create or set aside slots of appointments specifically for families that were looking to enroll around the time where families were really scrambling to get all these records, right? And so if they called, they would go on these VIP lists, they would get priority for these appointments, they would get help, the staff would kind of also help set up these appointments, and then they also cover transportation to and from these appointments. And I know earlier there was a conversation or a comment on waiting list, and just kind of, you know, how sometimes in terms of recruitment, you go out, you find families, but the systems are not necessarily ready for the families. And another pattern that came up in this pilot was, finding money to engage families from the time that they were engaged for recruitment and the time that they are able to enroll, or, if it's the slot opening up or their children finally being old enough. And they, the report outlined what some communities did, right? Some communities just, utilize their staff to call families who are on their waiting list like every so often, created pop-in events to continue to engage families, like a Mommy and Me or Family and Me like programs, up until they were able to enroll. And so again, you're just taking the time and allotting staff to hear from families, what are your biggest obstacles, and then how can we tailor the recruitment and services to local family needs. Right, and let me check the chat. Oh no, sorry, Michelle, about your tech issues. I know it's being recorded, and whatever you miss, I hope you can catch in the recording. And now I'm going to hand it over to Grace.
Thanks, Janet. And so, why is it important to target, historically underserved families for recruitment, right? So if we're looking at our enrollment patterns and we're finding that the families that we've prioritized or our funders have asked us to prioritize, if we're seeing that they're not being enrolled, we really do need to sort of focus on those families in our efforts. So next slide, please, Janet. So who you engage really does matter. So think about engaging families from demographic groups who are socially isolated, right? So Janet had referred to this. So as you're looking at your enrollment patterns, thinking about what are the demographics that we're not seeing, right? And so thinking about how you're able to connect with those families or connect with organizations that connect with those families or the families, the businesses they may patron. And so thinking about that. So I know sometimes they're referred to as hard to reach families, right? But we have to think about it as what about it is making it hard for families to be able to connect with programs, right? So really thinking about the systems, including ourselves in those systems, and thinking about what we might need to change to be able to connect. So again, thinking about families that are not in your programs or that are not receiving services. So I have a colleague who, looked at this in their program, and one of the things that they did is they're going out to communities and talking with families that are not enrolled to understand what's happening, right? Is there something about the way the program is being delivered or the way they're doing their recruitment or outreach efforts? And so trying to understand from their perspective what might be contributing to that or how you might be contributing to that. And sometimes the families, they might be enrolled in your program, but it might be a lower participation rate, right? Or you might see that as you're looking at outcomes, as you're looking at your kindergarten readiness, as you're looking at sort of development. If you're seeing any disparity or you're seeing differences, take that into consideration as well as you're thinking about your recruitment and outreach. And so what we'd like to do at this time is, again, we want you all to be able to learn from each other. And so we'll have some time together. And so in your breakout rooms, if you could reflect on recruitment strategies that you've used in the past, what worked about those strategies and what didn't work, right? And so reflecting on also what you're hearing. And so you'll get 8 minutes in your breakout room. And then when we come back together, we'll have a few of you share what some highlights from your discussion. And so you'll have 8 minutes in your rooms. And again, there'll be a small group. And so Susie, if you're ready, we can put folks in breakout rooms.
Right.
There you go. All right, welcome back. I think we have almost everyone back from the breakout rooms. Hopefully you all had a good discussion. So would love to hear any highlights from your discussion about recruitment strategies that you've used in the past, things that you've thought worked really well, or things that you're like, oh no, that definitely did not work. It's always nice when we could learn from each other. So if you'd like, you could unmute, or you could also share in the chat. Does anybody want to share what they talked about?
Sure, I can go ahead, Grace. So we talked about, I know in my program, I had a police social worker reach out to me because she runs a mom's group, and the mom's group was talking about assisting the early childhood program, which is us, in getting more kids into the programming. So I went and met with them, and they helped me rewrite our flyer so that it would, I hate to use the word negative, but be a little bit harsher with parents, giving them the information that they might need so that they could understand why early childhood would be so beneficial to their child. And if they were choosing not to send their child because they may feel that they were too young, or getting on the school bus is a lot for a 3-year-old, those sorts of things that I oftentimes hear from parents. So these moms helped us rewrite our flyer by saying things like, if you choose not to send your child to an early childhood program, when your child starts kindergarten, they will be behind because so much is learned in early childhood. And so then we gave a list of questions that they helped me come up with, asking parents if their kids could do things like we see, on our assessments that we want them to be able to complete, like counting to 20 and sharing with a friend and climbing up the ladder of a slide and sliding down, things like that. So we're hitting the domains, and I've already heard from one of our superintendents how excited they are to see this new flyer. So I'm really encouraged about getting those moms on board. And now that you guys have opened our eyes to the parent outreach ambassadors, I'm hoping that we can figure out a way to extend that to these moms so that we can be helping them as they're helping us fill up our program.
Thanks for sharing, Kristen. I think what's important about what you said is looking to parents to help you in your recruitment efforts, right? So we've seen that in our work as well with home visiting programs, having parents actually look at the materials that you're putting out there to see how would they respond, and then try it with different groups of parents too, right? And see what the response may be and what suggestions and feedback they have. So yeah, always looking to parents to kind of guide what you all are doing, what works and what not. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
I know Erica put into the chat that they talked about having monthly screenings and advertising much more than they ever have in the past on social media. Yes. Parents look on social media, right? To get information, to connect. So using that. Chris, you have your hand up. You can share, unmute yourself.
Sure. One of the things that I never thought I would be doing, but we actually hired 2 teaching assistants or paraprofessionals, whatever anyone calls them, kind of in efforts with a recruitment for students. We basically, parents came to screenings, and we were able to give 2 parents also a job in our program, being a teaching assistant. We enrolled our kids in our full day program, and we gained 2 additional paraprofessionals, which was very, very, very needed. So I'm like, look, we're there, like anything that we can do to get kids and parents in and staff. So it was kind of a cool thing to kind of go through this year.
Absolutely. It's always a plus when you can have former parents, right, also be teachers. That's somewhat in terms of the credibility for the program, right? And then also giving you all feedback, right? So thank you for sharing. I see, let me see, I don't want to make sure I can say your name right. Is it
It's Tanya.
Williams? Tanya, okay. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for helping. I was going to say, okay, Miss Williams, thank you. Go ahead, you can share, and then Katie, you'll share.
I think we've been more purposeful this particular year. So we planned a week in April where we had recruitment, where we had an open door policy for parents to come in to register and to do screenings. And we made sure that during that time of the week that we incorporated morning times and evening times. So maybe one day was 9 to 4, the other day was 10 to 7, so that we can reach the different time frames for parents. We were more purposeful about parents who registered online, calling them in the day before, reminding them of their appointments, and then even the day of, having specific staff call parents who have already registered online who need to come in to bring paperwork or for their child to be screened. And then those parents that we didn't show up for their appointments, I think just following back up with them, giving them another day and time offered. So just being more purposeful in reaching our parents, email, calling. We walked the neighborhoods to give out pamphlets and stuff for those hard to hit areas. So just trying to be more purposeful and trying to get our parents registered and screened now in trying to beat the summer rush.
Yes, thank you for sharing, Tanya. I hear multiple ways, right? You're emailing, you're calling, you're walking the neighborhood, right? All those ways. Thank you for sharing. Katie?
I just shared with my group that we have a home visiting program funded through prevention initiative that's housed in our early childhood school. And so we have a really close relationship with them. They're actually employees of our district as well. And so often those kids just naturally come right into our program because they serve the same population that we would serve as a PFA program. So they're probably one of our best recruiting tools, is having that really close relationship with, we call them CU early. So that their kids just kind of naturally come to us when they age out of home visiting.
Thank you for sharing. What a great transition for the parents, right? Transitioning from home visiting and then into a program. So you all, the fact that the 2 programs have that partnership is making it easier for parents to connect, right? So thank you for sharing. I see Justin shared in the chat that they usually carry flyers everywhere, right? Notice wherever you notice a congregation of parents with young children, you go over and speak to them about the benefits of early childhood education, and also having QR code in your wallet. Great. Thank you for sharing. Want to make sure I didn't miss anyone. Okay. Thank you all. Great.
I just want to briefly add to what Katie was saying. When I was doing a lot of parent engagement works with early childhood programs, I think some of the best 2-generational approaches is that co-location, like adult education classes in the same building, and parents are just in the same room, drop off in the classroom and then go to a different classroom to take their GED classes, ESL, parent leadership workshops, and just kind of creating a community space, which is, depending on where you live, sometimes space is a scarce resource, but I'm always a fan of co-location.
Thanks for sharing, Janet. Okay, so now you've, got some effective strategies and have families that are enrolling their children. And so we'll talk about enrollment and retainment. So with families, we want to make sure we're using a no wrong door approach, right? Wherever families go in a community, they're able to get the resources that they need. And so thinking about how we can partner with families in the application process, providing a warm, welcoming, family-friendly entry for families. This is another place where you can get feedback, asking parents, what do they think about your entryway? How did they feel when they first visited your program, or what was the process like for them? And using that to make changes. And then thinking about your application process, where might there be barriers, right? So you want to look at that and see what you can identify and how you can begin to eliminate barriers. Again, parents can give you information around this. You don't have to guess, asking them, what was your application process like, right? Continuing the local partnerships to support enrollment, right? Markenta talked about this, the medical, dental offices, your SNAP office, emergency assistance, and transportation. So continuing to partnership along that. And then the other early learning programs within your community, don't forget that. So wherever possible, I think in your community, if you can get a sense of like not competition, but partnership, there's usually more than enough children to be served in a community. I have yet to meet a community that's serving all the children in the community that want services. So initiating those partnerships with other early learning programs. And then if you within your program have more than one program, like you have a Head Start program, you also have a Preschool for All program, or Preschool for All expansion, thinking about how you can coordinate the intake process, right, within those different programs. Again, looking at it from the perspective of parents that are enrolling. Partner with parents to welcome new parents to the school, right? Again, you want to create the community and relationships early on. And then managing your wait list. So we talked about this before, but thinking about parents that are on your wait list, how are you communicating with them, letting them know where they are on the wait list, maybe offering some, inviting them to events that you might have in the program, any type of pop-up services, referring them to other programs where they can begin to get services right away. Once families enroll their children, and thinking about retainment, you want to connect families to resources. And so thinking about their basic needs, right? Do they need to be connected to, do they have a medical home, right? So connecting to resources around that. Are there other needs that are coming up for families that you can connect them to? Targeting your outreach for extra supports as needed. So looking at your attendance data, and reaching out to families whose children might not be coming to school, and thinking about what are the supports that are needed so that they're able to, you can retain them in the program. And this one's a very important one about continuing to engage parents in the program, and also helping them around leadership, developing their leadership, or giving them opportunities for leadership. So building relationships with families, offer opportunities for individual growth for parents within the program, thinking about how they work with your family support staff, thinking about goals that they have, and then really cultivating vehicles for parent voice and feedback. So throughout the presentation, we talked about different points where you can get feedback from parents. So you don't have to try to figure things out on your own, but make it a practice to consistently ask families, what is it that they need? What was their experience with enrollment? What do they need support around? And so really elevating parent voice within your program. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation, but we'd like to give you a moment to reflect. So you can choose one of these three prompts, and I think what we can do is let's put it in the chat since we're running out of time, unless you're like, I really want to share, and feel free to unmute to do that. But in the chat, share what is one takeaway from today's presentation, or you can share how something you learned today connects with what you already know. So a connection you've made, or you can share one thing that you will use in your outreach and recruitment practices. So let's just popcorn all these into the chat. We'd love to hear you all's reflections from today. So someone said they're going to look into QR codes. Good. So how to add that into your application process. Another person, they're going to revamp their flyer. Great. Reviewing the Parent Ambassador Initiative initiative. Okay. Of working with our partners and families. Wonderful. Revisiting the recruitment plan, thinking of ways to engage families on the wait list. Wonderful. Great. And we'd love to continue to stay in touch with you all. So as you're thinking about these strategies and you're thinking about, man, how do we, how do we do this? Or any questions that come up. On the next slide is our contact information. And so, yep, here I am, and there is Markenta and Janet. So feel free to reach out to us, to email us. If we don't have answers, we will connect you to people that we think have answers. And so we'll be able to figure it out between the three of us. We'll connect you all. And we will, Susie will be emailing you all the parent handbook that I know you all were not able to download, so you'll get that in an email from her. And last but not least, I want to share, we do have a conference that we put on every year. Our Partner Plan Act conference is June 7th and 8th, and it's free. And so there's the registration link. It's a great way to connect around some of these systems ideas that we're talking about around referral, outreach, and partnerships and collaboration. And so thank you all for your time and your engagement this afternoon. And I will hand it over to Susie, who has some final announcements to make.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to our 3 presenters today. This was a lot of great and very useful information. Just wanted to let you know that we will be following up with an email to this session. It's going to have a link to complete the evaluation, and you'll be able to receive the evidence of completion. And again, as Grace said, it will include the link for the PDF of the handbook that all of you were looking for. And if some of you were having some tech issues, this session is recorded and it will be available on the ECPL YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet subscribed, you can do so by going to the ECPL website. And then if you have any additional questions for ISB in regards to any of the sessions or questions that might have come up today, please feel free to email Jenny Metcalf. She can be reached at earlychai@isb.net. And last but not least, we wanted to let you know we do have probably one remaining administrator forum. It is scheduled for May 18th. And it is based on frequently asked questions about serving English learners in preschool programs. So it's going to be presented by 3 ISB staff, Jenny Metcalf, Yvonne Yablonsky, and Trevor Cottle, and then the ECPL's Tammy King. And this is in a follow-up to a newly released updated guidance for serving English learners in preschool programs in Illinois public school districts. So we would love to have you join us for that. Registration is open on our website at eclearningil.org. So that is about it. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And if you do have any last minute questions, please feel free to type them in the chat room. Otherwise, you are free to leave. And thank you again to Grace and Janet and Marquita. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Stay cool.